IMinistry, website and internet security issues. This is Ernest Stotts. We will be talking about several issues dealing with how to have a ministry online, but at the same time protecting your ministry from lawsuits and also protecting the young people who would be using your website. This is going to be more geared towards dealing with younger audiences and youth, but that's a lot of people who are online are the younger audiences and the youth. There are two sides to every issue. One Christian author says, "Let every worker in the master's vineyard study, plan, and devise methods to reach people where they are," and people are online. So that's why I think this is so important. How do we take advantages of these new and exciting technologies while at the same time keeping our visitors safe? That's becoming a greater and greater concern as more and more exploits are coming out every day, and people's personal information is getting compromised, and people are saying, I want to come visit your site, but I want to make sure that your site is secure, because we can't just say that any one site's secure anymore. Let's look at some examples of iMinistry. I want to look at how we can reach people and realizing that we need to realize how people are using the technology today. The Consumer Electronics Association of America says that the average American home now has at least 26 different electronic devices for communication and media. The Consumer Electronics Association of America also tracks sales and consumer references for 53 separate gadgets. 50% of Americans are online and use internet wirelessly. 63% of internet users go online from someplace other than their work or home. So some of these people who may be accessing internet wirelessly may be also accessing it, at Starbucks or wherever they may happen to be. McDonald's, you name it. 73% of American adults use the internet. 94% of American teens use the internet. Notice it's not 100%. There's still some that, that's not their interest and they don't want to really have any part of it. And I think we may get up around 98%, and I think that'll probably be our saturation point. Part it's because of economics and what people can afford. 44% of Americans have high-speed broadband connections. So you're seeing the people are there. Now that we realize that they're accessing the media, they're using all these different things to consume the media, let's start looking at some of the safety considerations. First of all, we need to be careful what your online name means or could mean. When you are choosing an online name for a chat or for a ministry, you need to think outside of the box and say, what are the other implications? And what I recommend is also then taking your ministry name and plugging it into the Urban Dictionary that's online. If you go look at the Urban Dictionary and say, ooh, is that what I want to be advertising as my ministry name? Choose your words and your photos wisely. You need to realize that what people are looking at the photos, you may say, that photo's maybe just a little too revealing or this or that of this particular individual. If someone looking at it late at night, they're going to have totally different thoughts about that video or that pictures that are on your website than what someone may be looking at it, in the daytime. There's a different mentality, and it's been proven over and over through several different studies that when people are looking at photos late at night and when they're trying to find stuff, they're going to be looking at they may look at the same photo and have totally different thoughts than what you're thinking. Never use full names of anyone under the age of 18. This is my recommendation. Now, I know several people will say, what about journalistic integrity? I think you can have journalistic integrity by mentioning so-and-so by first name. You can say, Jane at Rossville Church, performed these duties or had this ministry or did this event. You don't have to give first and last name. That really doesn't take away from they've got a first name, they've got a picture, and they know that it's at this church or at this event or this social. It wouldn't be too hard for someone to really track that person down if they really want to. But when you give them first name, last name, then you've just given, if there's a predator or someone who's not a very nice person online, you've just given them a lot of information much quicker and easier. Make sure you have a media release for everyone who's going to be on your photos and videos. And this includes adults, because sometimes they don't want to be on there and they say, hey, I never gave permission for my picture to be up. And if it's a single photo of them and it's up on your website, then you've got a problem. If it's in a crowd shot, then it's a little bit harder for them to really contest it. But at the same time, not only are we looking at just the legal aspects, remember, we are trying to have a ministry. And as a ministry, you don't want to be offending people if we can avoid it. And that's the whole goal. Everything you put online stays online forever. That's something that you need to, if you don't know about, it's called the World Wide Web Archive or Wayback, or there's several different archives of the internet. Basically, the search engines go out and crawl your website, they post that information up on the web, and then they keep it on this archive, and then every time you change it, they still have the old versions. You can drill down through your site and see your old photos. So it's really important that before we post things up, you say, well, I can take it down anytime. That's true, you can. But once it's up there, you don't know what search engines have crawled it. You don't know what information's where it's already gone, because it can be anywhere. Never give out or store personal information on your website. If you have an interactive thing, I always recommend you tie into a very secure back-end database so it's not sitting on your website or not on the same directory. I recommend not even on the same server. That's a bit technical. And if you're not the technical person who's in charge of your ministry, you might want to talk to the person who is actually doing the technical side and say, have we secured the data? Is it on a separate system? So that way, if our website gets compromised, we've still able to keep the data secure in some fashion. Web 2.0 security risk. All these great technologies that are out there, the Flickr, the MySpaces, the YouTubes, the GodTube, all of these different things are great. But if you take a look at some of these statistics, a lot of communications, and there's been a source of major malware. You can get malware through, Google Talk or, instant messaging. Each of these things become a new avenue. And that's one of the things that the hackers and the crackers have found out. Hey, they're using all these great tools to share information and share pictures. Inside this picture, I can embed a code that will exploit their system so I can take over their machine. 60 to 70% of the vulnerabilities detected in 2007 were web application vulnerabilities. That means things that were on your website that were being hosted were being detected as vulnerabilities. So it wasn't necessarily, well, they went to a bad website. No. They could have gone to a perfectly legitimate website, but it got compromised, and people didn't even know it got compromised, and someone uploaded some hacker code in the background. 1 in 10 websites is infected with malicious code, and 70% of the web infections are found on legitimate websites. That's something that we need to realize, that it's actually legitimate websites that have got multiple pages, and if a hacker infects your website, what they're going to do is they probably won't do it on your home page. They'll put it on one of the other pages, so when somebody clicks by, it's called a click by or drive by download, where they click on its website and it's got a graphic that you may not remember. It can even be an invisible graphic where it downloads this, but at the same time it downloads a bunch of malware or software where they can take over that person's computer and harvest their information that they have stored on there. A lot of people are talking about all these different bloggings and tweet, and do we Twitter, do we tweet or do we not tweet? That's the real question. As we approach an IMinistry, we need to realize that if the ministry is going to be really thriving, it's got to be dynamic. And how are people getting into these type of ministries? They're getting into these ministries by tweeting, by blogging on Facebook, MySpace, wherever they happen to be, on a WordPress. Social networking sites are quickly moving into every environment, whether it's work environment, home environment. You can use it from your phone. A lot of phones now have got applications where you can sit there and check your Facebook and your Twitter accounts right from your cell phone. And you can even have it do latitude, where it's telling GPS coordinates where you're at all times. I don't recommend that for young people, obviously. But because of that, we're seeing this growth in this type of technology where it's very accessible wherever you are. I can take pictures with my cell phone and I send them straight up to my Facebook account. If I'm doing that, what types of avenues am I creating for malicious software? Am I doing this in a secure fashion? And if I'm ministering to these people, am I doing it from a secure machine? Do I know that I'm not infecting them by sending them out these messages? Am I sending out an attachment that's got an infection that came with it? These are all things that you need to realize. IDC is really talking about the Web 2.0 technologies and how can we securely help organizations, because in the economic turndown, we don't want to be doing big get-togethers. People are wanting to do teleconferences. They're wanting to do online events instead of real-world events, or real events with real people. They want to do it virtually. Well, as you're setting up these virtual environments and these virtual events, are you able to keep it secure? And if you're just saying, well, I've got a web filter and it's going to keep all the bad stuff out, web filters are not working. It is a broken medium, I'm afraid to say, because it's going by reputation of that URL. Well, it looks at the one URL and it says CNN.com. Everything on CNN.com is fine because that's a news site. We trust it. But what happens is CNN may get compromised and some of their other pages are not fine. We can say, some ministry site is out there, and with that ministry site, you can say, hey, I've got this great ministry site that's preaching to young people, and the home page may be completely safe, but one of the other pages may have malicious software loaded to it. This is where you need to make sure that you're scanning your systems and you know that it's secure. When you start interacting with people and you start getting their personal information like their addresses, their names, all of this type of stuff, then you need to make sure that you're keeping all that stuff secure. And you're saying, well, I'm just using it on my desktop or on my laptop. Then if you're starting to use instant messaging and you're starting to share files, someone could send you a file that could then pull all information off of your desktop and off of your laptop and send it to other people. And that's something we need to make sure we're being very careful about, who has access and what technologies we're allowing on our machines and what type of connectivity is there. Because if you look at the vulnerabilities, webmail, blogging, instant messaging, these where a lot of the vulnerabilities are coming out. Lost or stolen mobile PDA devices, smartphones, if you have all information stored in there, mobile, USB, iPods, the gadgets. See how they're making up a whole other category of stuff where those things are disappearing and a lot of people's personal information. And like I said, as a ministry, we're not just here to worry about the legality. We don't want to offend, because we're here to minister to people, not making them start second guess, is this a fly-by-night organization, or have they just compromised my my personal information? And if they have, boy, I don't think a lot about that ministry. These are things that we need to think about. Data leakage is happening through all these different things, the peer-to-peer, the blogs, the webmail, the instant messaging, and what they're looking for is social security numbers, credit card numbers, financial statements. If you're sending out receipts for people that are, giving to your ministry, are you doing it in a secure fashion? International, you're looking at the leakage of the information coming out of your computers. Do you have some way to monitor it? If you don't, you need to start taking steps to consider that. Also, the browsers have been hacked. All of the browsers, including Firefox, but Firefox is a better browser than Microsoft, just from the standpoint that it's a little more secure, and there's some plugins you can put in to make it more secure. And if you go to my website, es-es.net, I've got some recommendations there on how to secure your browsers. But you need to realize that hackers are looking at individual computers. It's not always necessarily that they want your information. A lot of times they just want to use your computer to attack somebody else. But at the same time, while they're using your computer, they'll run a scan against your computer and say, oh, I see social security numbers. Oh, I see credit cards. Oh, I'll pull that stuff off and use that too. Thank you very much. So these are things we need to realize, that because we're using Web 2.0 technologies like instant messaging and Twitter and all these type of things, we need to make sure that we've kept our local machines up to date on their AV, antivirus signatures, that we've got anti-malware running on them, and that we've got some way of detecting if stuff's going out on these machines that should not be going out. Old filtering software, as I mentioned before, really doesn't work well anymore. Before, we were just worried about emails being sent out as spams, or what's called proxies, where they were being sent out over multiple things. So we did what was called IP reputation back in the day. Then we moved up to Web 1.0 technologies, where we said, okay, everything at google.com is fine, or everything at this particular website is fine. Tangle, which is also called GodTube, or GodTube's been renamed to Tangle. Everything on Tangle is fine. Well, actually, there's some stuff on Tangle where there's been stuff uploaded to Tangle that had viruses attached to it. So because of that, you go to Tangle, if you click on the wrong video, you could download something to your machine and they could take over your machine. That's where it needs to be more dynamic. When you are researching what type of filtering system you want to put in for your ministry, you need to look at something that can actually look at every single page and do a risk index on that page, where it's not just doing it by the site, but it actually looks at the content, and as it's downloading the content, it says, oh, wait, there's malware coming down through this content in real time. That's something that you need to consider. Now, what is our legality? Why are we really required to do? COPA, which is the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, does it apply to us? The answer is yes and no. The rules apply to the following: operators of commercial websites or online services that are directed towards children 13 years that collect personal information from the children. And we say, okay, we're not running commercial, it's a ministry, we're not here to make profit. But operators of general audience sites that knowingly collect personal information from children under 13. Okay, that would kind of fall in line with even nonprofits and ministries, even though there seems to be some exemption there, and it's kind of gone both ways in the court system as I've looked at some of the cases. So there's not a real strong precedence saying yes or no. Because of that, again, we're not just worried about the legal factors, we're worried about protecting our ministry and the people we're ministering to. And operators of general audience sites that have a separate children's area that collect personal information from children. These are things that, a lot of our sites can fall into this. Oh yes, we're doing this, we're trying to collect personal information from children, even if you're registering for an event. What are the COPA requirements then? A site must obtain parental consent before collecting, using, or disclosing personal information about a child. A site must post a privacy policy, which I recommend every site having a privacy policy anyways, because then they understand that yes, your ministry is serious about taking care of the people that they're ministering to. We have one on our school website. The site must allow parents to revoke their consent and delete information collected from their children. So they have to have an ability to say, okay, information has been collected. No, I don't want that stored about my kid. The site must maintain confidentiality, security, and integrity of all personal information collected from the children. So you have to have some way of saying, yes, we audit this, and yes, if you're dealing with children under 13 years old. Now, like I said before, I recommend if you're dealing with anyone under the age of 18 who is not legally an adult, that you need to be really extra careful about the personal information you collect and then how you secure it. We also want to be careful with the adults. But nothing gets parents more excited than if we compromise or endanger their children, and it should be. That is perfectly right. So that's something that, again, as a ministry, we have a higher calling and I believe a higher duty to protect young people. Privacy policies must include types of personal information you collect, their name, their home address, email address, or their hobbies, how the site will use the information. Is it going to be marketing? What are you supplying information? Are you going to notify them of contest winners? Or are you going to make information available through children's participation in a chat room? Or whether personal information is forwarded to other people or third parties. And that all, you need to determine how your ministry is structured inside of the church, and is it classified as a third party if it sends it up to the local church organization. A contact person at the website should include a phone number, a snail mail, and an email. I recommend you report all data collected. Now, one of the things that you don't have to, but again, as I said, as a ministry, because we're here to represent the Lord, we need to go to a higher plane. And this is where I believe that you even put information about what's called clickstream. For example, on my website, I keep track of all the IP addresses of people who come to my website. I also track them and see, okay, they went to this website, then they went to our contact page, then they went to ordering page. As I'm going down through this, I'm tracking the way that they navigate through my website. So I say, oh, I'm getting more people going to these sections of my website. No one's going to this section. This must not be well done, or this must not have much of an appeal to my market. I do that so we can do a better job on our website. But at the same time, I want to let people know that I'm collecting this type of information. Because I'm collecting this type of information, I put it in my privacy log, that I do network traffic logs. While it may not necessarily have their name stamped to it, but does collect their IP and what country they're from and where they're coming from, and then it tracks where they're going on my website. This is an example image release form that was done by the General Conference Legal Office, and this just gives you an example. And again, these are on my website. I've got more resources on my website where you can download these example policies, including Georgia Cumberland Academy's privacy policy. You're welcome to it, and again, you can email me and I'll send these to you at any time. General guidelines, just make sure you have a written privacy policy, and make sure you follow it if you do. Make sure you have a media release form as a part of your privacy policy. Collect as little information as possible and make sure it is stored safely and securely. Even the media release forms that are hand-signed, they're put in a filing cabinet that is locked in our office, and it's actually in the back part of the office. There's a front part of the office where visitors sometimes come, and then there's a back part of the office where visitors do not go, and that's a locked filing cabinet, and that's where we keep all of our privacy policies under lock and key. Be careful what you post online and what you say to youth online. Remember, anything you say can be twisted and turned around possibly, so you want to be careful what you say. Don't get too friendly with the young people. Yes, we're here to minister to them, and yes, we're here to lead them to the Lord, but we're not here to be their best buds. We are here to be, hopefully, a minister and someone who's leading them to the Lord as a leader and authority figure, not necessarily as their best friend. And youth are fickle. They will change who their friends are from moment to moment, and that's something we need to remember as we move forward. And you're responsible for everything you post or collect online, and we can all be held accountable for what we post or what we collect online. The reality of the Web 2.0 world, Young people are being targeted, and information collected about them is used to locate them. We must be careful what information we post about young people online. This right here is a video, and if you come download this, actually I'll put not only this narrated PowerPoint, but I'll actually put the actual PowerPoint file. You can click on this, and this will take you off to NetSmarts, where they have a video about tracking Teresa, and basically it goes through and it shows how they are able to, within 25 minutes, track a young lady right down to her home address. And this was actually a real young lady that was done by the FBI, and this young lady thought she was well trained. She thought she was being smart and being safe online, but there was enough clues from all these different websites and doing different searching and Google data mining, which I'll show you in just a few minutes. They were able to pull this information and to know what time she would be home, what time her parents would be home, and exactly with Google 3D Earth, you can zoom in. You can, even if it's Google Streets has gone down her road, you could look at the house. You could see what the windows and doors are. It gets a little bit kind of scary when you start realizing how much information is available. And you can say, well, we live kind of out in the country. That's not necessarily a guarantee. Georgia Cumberland Academy is in the country, but at the same time, Google 3D has been on our campus because those are county roads, and they've driven right up behind our dorms, and they've taken pictures. And this is, again, why we want to be very careful about what we do, because you may not know, if you haven't gone out to see, whether Google 3D has been through your neighborhood or through the neighborhood where these young people are. Something else is also changing drastically in our environment. As we were talking a little bit before, we're talking about some of the IMinistry, and most people think of internet ministry. It's changing because it is turning into mobile. 1.2 billion mobile youth. Where are they? You look at North America, we have 99.3 million youth that are using mobile. That means they're using their cell phones for hitting Facebook, Twitter, Skype, all these type of interactive mediums, instant messaging, texting back and forth. That's a whole nother medium that we can get into that I think we need to have incorporated into our websites. If we have just a static website, kids are going to go to it once, they'll enjoy it, they'll have a fun time. Young people will, adults will, but unless there's something changing and there's something new for them to see, they're not going to come back to it. Unless there's something, oh yeah, I want to go back. They may come back to it occasionally, but they're not going to come back to it on a regular basis. In our media-saturated world, it's got to be dynamic. It's got to be changing to keep our interest. And you can look across and you can see all these, different areas of the country where the mobile people are. Down at the bottom of this, I want to point out right here where you can see 1.24 billion mobile youth in 2009, rising to 1.5 billion by 2012. As a standalone country, mobile youth would be the second biggest in the world, behind only China. By 2010, they will be number one. There'll be more mobile youth around the world that are tied into cell phones and using a mobile technology, whether it's an iPod that can get online wirelessly, or whether it's an iTouch, or whether it's the iPhone or BlackBerry or whatever. They are going to be consuming mobile technology. So I think we need to really make sure that our ministries are geared, if they've not moved into mobile technologies, that they need to move into mobile technologies. Why we care. Here's just some statistics. A child goes missing every 40 seconds in the U.S. That's over 2,100 per day. In 2005, 662,196 children were reported lost, runaway, or kidnapped. 2/3 of all missing children reports were from youths aged 15 to 17, and 2/5 of the missing children's aged 15 to 17 were abducted due to internet activity. That's huge. If we do the math, over the past few years that we've had internet, we're talking about over 2 million youth that have come up missing and will be missing because of internet activity here very quickly. That's a lot of young people. Now, oftentimes, the youth come back, but they don't always. And I've worked with, a couple cases locally inside our churches of young people, and, out of the 3 cases that I've worked with, 2 of the young ladies we were able to, eventually got back to their homes. One of the young ladies, and it's going on almost 4 years now, is still missing, and no one knows where she is. So it's not just happening out in the world. It is happening inside of the church. And this is something that's really important. Let's look at how you can gather information with Google. Basically, you can type in the word site:myspace.com and then put in parentheses birthday, and you'll find all the kids' birthdays who've said, my birthday is myspace.com, my phone number, or cell number, or cell, or if you try that, you'll be surprised how many you come up with. Place the name in quotation marks using variations. For example, the first name and the last name, the legal first, and then the last. I found some school sites that had an amazing amount of information about young people online that was actually kind of scary, including addresses and everything else. Information from Google Hacking Database identifies, advisories and severe vulnerabilities, error messages, if contain too much information, files containing passwords. Johnny iHack stuff. He now works for Google. But if you go look at some of his, he's got really easy search strings you can plug into Google, and you can test your website or your ministry site and making sure that you're not giving out sensitive information. So this gives you just some of the information that you can realize what's there. How do we keep people safe and secure? First of all, continued education of our computer users. Anyone who's using the technology, interacting, whether it's a minister, whether it's a techie, whether it's a secretary, how they're communicating, what software they're running on their computers, what are they allowed to download, what should they not download, and not just tell them not, but give them a reason why. Don't click on strange links. Avoid the tempting, click attacks. Don't release personal information online. Use caution with instant messaging or SMS. If you're texting, that's great, but be careful of what the double meanings can be. Now, I'm going to be a little bit split on this. I'm going to say avoid social networking sites if you're just going out and having fun. If you're going there as if you're sitting at your ministry and you're sitting there, you're working at your job, whatever it is, whatever ministry you're involved in, people that are at your ministry are working, they shouldn't be just, posting to Facebook for fun. If they're doing it as a part of the ministry where they're reaching the young people, then yes, they should be on the social networking sites. But again, there needs to be attacking it or approaching it from the standpoint of a minister, and I am ministering to these people. Don't email sensitive information. Don't hit reply to received email containing sensitive information. Type it in again, because you may not realize where that email actually came from unless you go look at all the header information and try and track out where it actually came from. Type it in fresh to make sure who it's going to. Require a mandatory VPN, a virtual private network over wireless networks. And if you go to my website, again, es-es.net, I have a whole section on how to secure your wireless. I have a narrated PowerPoint just like this is that'll step you through some really good tips on how to secure your wireless. Data security continued. We're basically looking at host-based technology, require hard drive encryption on all your laptops. So where are you storing the control portable storage media and manage. You need to manage the desktops, the laptops, the iPhones, the Blackberries. What information is being stored on them? What information is being allowed to be stored on them? Require the use of personal desktop firewall software, including on the phones. Require the use of personal desktop anti-malware software, and consider implementing document managing systems so that way you can track where the documents go. Now, this is really kind of getting in the technical side, and I realize that. And this is if you're not a technical person, I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. At the same time, you need to talk to your technical people and just make sure that, are we having some type of intrusion prevention on our network? Have we considered network access control or some type of device to control who gets on my network? Do you allow anybody on do you have a wireless access point and you allow any visitor that walks in the building on your network? If you do, I can stand outside or I can be half a block away and still get into your wireless, and unless you've secured your network, I can get right into the hard drives, pull information off, or anybody can who has just a little bit of knowledge. And implement information leakage and data detection prevention. Consider IP reputation-based pre-filtering solutions. That's not the end-all, but it can oftentimes block a lot of things out. Now for us, what I've done is, because our ministry is specifically targeted to the U.S., and we do have some international students, but they're usually from South Korea. We have specifically blocked most of China from getting into our servers from the standpoint that that's not where our ministry is, and we know a lot of viruses and a lot of stuff come out of there. The Middle East, a lot of stuff comes out of there. We block most of the Middle East because we really have no affiliation, and our ministry is not meant to reach that. So that's where you have to consider what type of ministry are you running, Is it a global? Is it more of a local? Is it a, nationwide? What is your target audience? And then you need to run vulnerability scans on your network and make sure that everything's secure. As you're designing an online site, we need to realize it's dynamic and it's changing. First, we need to have a purpose for our website. We need to build extensible and flexible gathering places. Remember, people want to meet, greet, and talk and be social online. And it needs to create meaningful and evolving member profiles, design a range of roles. Notice all of this is making it so it's interactive. Like I said before, if the website's just static and they just pull information off, they may come once or twice, but that's probably about it. This is where you need to have, forums, places where they can communicate and talk back and forth. Develop a leadership program, promote cyclical events, things that are going to happen on a regular basis. Integrate kind of rituals of community life, if you're going to celebrate, the resurrection of our Lord, or if you're going to celebrate Christmas or something like that, then you need to bring that in and say, this is a part of what we're going to do. We'll, have these little contests or this little event, and just something fun that makes it part of daily life. And then facilitate member-run subgroups where they can have a chat section where they can break out and break into discussions and say, let's talk about this a little bit more. Build a site for quick scanning, and remember, people are not running to read paragraphs and pages. They're running to read in short chunks. It's a media-saturated site. We are media-saturated people. So we don't want to read paragraphs and books anymore. We just want to give me the byline, give me the quick tag. Okay, I see what it's about. And then maybe give me a link if I want to read more in depth. Again, this has been Ernest. I hope you found this information useful, and I pray that the Lord blesses your ministry and that you help keep it secure and safe. And there's more information on my website. Again, you can always email me at es-es.net, erstots. And my website, you can go there and gather information from there. Thank you so much.